Welcome everyone to the 2020 APAC Groundbreakers virtual tour by APACO UC. This year, our event will be the biggest one ever done with 174 sessions, including normal sessions, workshops, and hands-on labs from 123 different speakers over 11 days. Also, it will cover sessions on 4 different languages. Please remember to register to as many sessions you can, and all sessions will be available to replay as many times as you want for 2 weeks after the initial session date and time. You can also interact with the speaker at any time during that 2 weeks by posting questions or comments directly in the playback session page. I would like to say thanks to all Oracle user groups and Java user groups that made this event possible, and also to our sponsors, Oracle Groundbreakers and CloudDB. Now for today's session, Secure Oracle Database using Industry Standard Security Best Practice by Harish Niddagatta. Please feel free to write questions at any time during the session at the Q&A tab of the Zoom webinar, and the speaker will be answering them at the end of the session. If you have any issues during the presentation, please feel free to contact me at any time on the chat tab of the Zoom webinar. Just to be more clear, questions to the speaker, please use the Q&A tab of Zoom. He will be answering at the end of the session. If you have any issues with your session or you have any questions to the organizers, you can write to the moderator, that's me, by the chat. Now, without any more delays, I would like to leave you with this amazing session by Harish Niddagatta. Okay, Harish, I am disconnecting. You can now share your screen and start the presentation.
Awesome.
There we go. I can confirm I can hear and see your screen properly. I'm now putting myself in mute.
Okay, awesome. Hi all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your current location. As Francisco said, my name is Harish Niddagatta. I'm the product manager for configuration and security compliance management area within Enterprise Manager product, which is part of Oracle. This is a very big area. Clearly, it's going to be hard to cover everything in 45 minutes. So today I'll be focusing on providing a macro level insight into various capabilities for ensuring security of your database targets and monitoring those from compliance to your security policies. And I'm happy to connect and interact offline for your specific requirements as a follow-up. So this is a standard safe harbor statement, and here is the session abstract, and here is the plan for this session. I'll spend about 2+ minutes for a quick Enterprise Manager overview, mainly focused on the license pack that you need for leveraging compliance management capabilities for database targets. And rest of the session, I will focus on security compliance management. Depending on the time left in the end, I will give a quick demo of using click-throughs. Great, so let's get started. Enterprise Manager has led the industry for years in stack-centric active management. It provides a central communications hub for Oracle database and engineered systems customers who use Enterprise Manager every single day for troubleshooting and lifecycle management activities across their hybrid Oracle estate. It provides sophisticated automation to achieve massive scale in database management activities. Importantly, it also provides segregation of duties via comprehensive roles-based access control and privilege management to ensure that its automation is used in a controlled, secure, and business appropriate fashion. Enterprise Manager is widely deployed in the Oracle customer base and has a massive ecosystem of partners who are skilled in its usage and have achieved Oracle Partner Network specialization. Let's look at database lifecycle management pack a bit more. There are three key features in DBLM pack: provisioning, patching, configuration, and compliance management. Provisioning, as you know, it provides support for provisioning all types of supported Oracle database versions and also all types of database targets. Patching, you can patch your database targets by leveraging the subscription-based model called fleet maintenance. And the third feature is configuration and compliance. With that, you will be able to track inventory usage and generate a report of the usage, including host, Oracle database, Oracle stack, and third-party products. You can define a reference or gold configuration and compare configurations of respective targets to analyze the configuration drift from your security policies. This pack includes out-of-the-box support for various industry standards like STIG that comes from Department of Defense in United States, CIS benchmarks, and Oracle's own standards for security compliance. You can use any of these security standards to monitor and ensure your databases are securely configured and stays secure. So having said, given this is a very quick 100,000 feet overview of what DBLM pack is capable of doing. So let's look at security compliance management in a bit more detail. To begin with, let's look at few of the security challenges that you deal with regularly, but I want to just give a context a little bit on the challenges the world is facing in terms of data breaches. So data breaches are becoming more frequent. There is a big increase in number of records, and the value of the information stolen is changing every time. There have been quite a few breaches in the past couple of years. Just a sample of breaches, I'm showing it here. Marriott International, it had a breach in 2018. It was a big breach. It's almost 340 million people were impacted. And the UK Information Commissioner's Office fined them up to a tune of 99 million pounds. But the bigger issue here with Marriott International is this breach happened in 2018, but it happened again in 2020, earlier this year. Though less number of guests were impacted, but the fact that it happened again within 2 years of the first incident is very concerning from security of sensitive information. I mean, as a Marriott customer, I'll be worried about my personal information, my credit card information, how safe it is, how secure it is, how is it protected? That worries me a lot. Capital One, one of the largest banks in the United States with strong cyber security tools, ended up with data breach. They were fined about $80 million for lack of proper security protocols. A lone hacker was able to get past these tools and get access to sensitive information of about 100 million people. And how did the lone hacker get this, right? I mean, the lone hacker basically exploited a misconfiguration in one of the application firewalls. So if you look at various research reports and in all the data breaches and all those things that is happening, if you read up all those things, you will find misconfigurations to be one of the common or rather preferred ways for bad actors to exploit and get hold of sensitive information. Similarly, there are breaches in APAC region too. I mean, many countries like Singapore, Australia, Malaysia, etc. are encountering breaches. And companies like Toyota are also reporting unauthorized access to servers. So misconfigurations have become one of the preferred ways for bad actors to exploit and get hold of sensitive information, according to one of the data breach reports. I mean, this is the data breach report from Verizon that they publish it every year. And 45% of the breaches are due to misconfigurations. And there are this research data that suggests cybercrime cost businesses about $2 trillion in total just in 2019. And data breaches in Asian region and across worldwide are expected to increase, not only in the volume of data records, but also in the value of information stolen. Just digging a little bit deeper into data breaches in APAC. I'm just sharing a high level data from Verizon data breach report that was published early this year. Please read the report for more complete details. Bad actors in APAC target various sites for financial benefits. Web applications attacks were the top vehicle for both security incidents being reported and also confirmed breaches being reported just in the APAC region. These attacks are mostly when someone who has stolen the credentials is testing against your web-facing infrastructure and crossing their fingers to see success. Fact that there are data breaches, it's not surprising to see there are a fair number of hackers getting successful. So credentials were the top stolen data type in the region's breaches. And misconfigurations is another area for bad actors to monetize. Misconfiguration errors occur when an employee, typically a system administrator or some other person with significant access to a large number of data, stands up a database without the usual security controls. In some situations, administrators' mindset is like, oh, nobody will see this. I can set up the security controls later. Nobody will know that I have provisioned a database. Nobody will know that I have sensitive information in this database, or I'll do it at a later time in the day after lunch or after a break or something like that. They have that. There are some situations where that mindset has kicked in, and what happens is the bad actor, if the bad actor gets to know about this or he finds out, everything is lost. Security posture is compromised. Bad actor who wants to monetize is already in the dark web talking about these newly found treasure. This is just a sample set of instances of data breaches to set some context for the remaining part of the session. Definitely there are many research reports that give you a lot of more details on these things. So securing data is important so that we don't have to deal with these data breaches. But how do you go about doing that? There are tangible number of challenges in achieving that. Let's look at just few of those. I'm sure if you are a database administrator, or if you are a system administrator, you are very familiar with many of these things, right? Or pretty much all of these things. One of the biggest challenges around weak account controls and audits. You probably will be asking questions like, for insecure user accounts, are user accounts secure through strong passwords, or limits for the users in place? Do user accounts have relevant restrictions such as profiles, a default role, and a table space restrictions? In terms of privileges and roles, right? I mean, if you're an administrator or an IT manager, you will be thinking, okay, do I have policies in place wherein I have appropriate privileges and roles for each user put in place to restrict access to data? As an example, are only known number of users granted table privileges that need to query data in a table? I mean, you will probably be thinking of all these questions as part of putting together a security policy and as part of designing your the database configuration and then as implementing it. And auditing plays a very big role. I mean, are you auditing your database activities? What specific activities do you audit? Who are your highest risk users and what are they doing? How do you manage the audit trail? Are the auditing steps you take compliant with your organization's audit policies? These are just sample set of questions that comes to my mind. But if you are not auditing or you're not limiting privileges to various users, and if you don't have continuous monitoring for security compliance, then you are clearly opening up the door for bad actors to do bad things. And that feeds into the access to this unprotected sensitive data, right? Today, if you look at the various customers' environments, right? There are many instances where thousands of databases end up with unprotected sensitive data like credit card number, social security info, payroll details, etc. Questions like what type of sensitive data and how much of those do I have must be answered, or relevant security policies in place to protect all the table columns that hold sensitive data from any inappropriate access. So you end up questioning these things, and then you also wonder, how do you go about monitoring the security policies continuously to ensure no unauthorized actions are happening? And any unknown, undetected, insecure configuration changes increases the risk of security exposure. Questions like, is my database configured to reduce risk and be compliant with my company's security policies have to be answered. And limited visibility into security compliance of your database configuration leads you to dealing with unknown vulnerability in your data center. Now, when you're dealing with all these types of challenges, right, security challenges, then how do you go about getting visibility into these? I mean, you need some management tool wherein you could get one big management tool that can give you an ability to continuously monitor and assess the database for security posture and then show you those compliance levels of various targets, right? So you need one management tool to detect and flag deviations in database security policies, any unpatched systems or those systems that are non-compliant to your patch management policy, insight into over-privileged accounts, insight into unprotected sensitive data. If you don't have any auditing policies in place, then the management tool should flag that. And all weak account management controls like no password policies, etc., must be flagged by the management tool. And whenever there are deviations, you need, whenever there is a violation, there is an event generated, then you need to know, you need to be notified when the violations occur. And you need a tool to easily set up ways to remediate any non-compliance of these violations. So these are just some of the security challenges you face and strive to address in your data center all the time. Sorry. Now, let's say you have all the relevant security patches applied to the database targets, and you have securely configured with strong account controls. You have audit trail in place, and tables containing sensitive data are protected. Let's say all of those things are in place. That is great, right? I mean, so far so good. Now, how do you go about ensuring they are at the desired security level all the time? Configuration changes do happen, right? I mean, either a certain business application requires certain changes in the database, so you need to make those changes, or some new employee joins the company and you need to provide access to them with the relevant privileges and roles. So today, there are pain points in ensuring the compliance level as some configuration change or user privileges can quickly make your database targets to be non-compliant with your own security policies. So depending on the role you play within the org, you will want to know and take certain actions to ensure these database targets are secure and compliant with your own security policies. So let's say if you're a CISO. As a CISO, you're at the end of the day, you are accountable for the security of your data center. So you as a CISO at regular intervals, you want to know if your databases are compliant with your own security policies. The benefit CISO gets out of this is to ensure compliance posture is at desired level all the time. If not, what are the next steps to address any SLA violations and bring it back to compliance, desired compliance level. And if you're a security officer, your objective will be in ensuring compliance SLAs to various line of businesses, or LOBs as we call it. To that effect, you will be regularly reviewing the current security posture of these database targets. Depending on that, you will be able to determine if you have your resources deployed effectively with relevant expertise to ensure compliance SLAs. If you are a database administrator, You are the individual with relevant expertise, and you will be primarily looking at all the violations and working towards remediating each of those violations in a prioritized manner as quickly as possible. So if you look at it from a compliance perspective, depending on the hat you wear within your org, there are tangible pain points to ensure security of database targets and compliance with your security company's security policies. Now, and Enterprise Manager as your management tool caters to address precisely these pain points. Enterprise Manager provides a continuous security compliance check mechanism that can be done at scale. You can have thousands of database targets associated to one compliance standard, and you can get the security posture for all these targets in one go. This can also be a continuous compliance check process that runs every 24 hours or sooner if you want to, if you desire to do so. With this, you can check for any misconfiguration and deviations from your policies. You can find answers for questions like, is the database configured and compliant, or right security controls in place? And you might want insight into all users who have access to the database. You may want insight into access privileges each user has. And you might want insight into the type of sensitive data that is there in the database. If there are issues with fine-grained access control or auditing policies or database configurations, Enterprise Manager triggers a violation, which generates an event, and a notification is sent out to the database administrators. So in case of violations, Enterprise Manager provides an interface to define a remediation steps. You get a user UI interface or even automation way if you don't want to do it through CLI. For each type of violation, you will have very specific remediation that you can define as part of corrective actions to get it resolved. And you could do all of these with ready-to-use compliance standards that are available out of the box with Database Lifecycle Management Pack. And there are broad set of standards provided by Enterprise Manager. CIS benchmark version 2.10 and 3.00 for Oracle 12c databases. We provided the first version of CIS support in Enterprise Manager 13.4. We support single instance cluster databases and also multi-tenant database targets, both container databases and pluggable database targets. Enterprise Manager also supports STIG standards that are periodically published by Department of Defense. We support STIG standards for both 11.2G and 12C database targets. Besides these industry standard targets, Enterprise Manager also supports Oracle's own set of security best practices and recommendations for all supported database targets, like whether it's a single instance rack or multi-tenant targets. If you look at the library in the product, there are thousands of checks in the compliance library. Depending on your requirement, you can choose, you can cherry pick specific set of rules or checks that you need, whether you want to focus on, say, just the database initialization parameters or monitor user privileges or more broader checks. You can cherry pick the specific rules that you want, and you can create a standard out of that and have targets associated to that standard and start monitoring that. You can use these standards as is, or you can further customize to align with your own policies. You can, in addition to that, let's say the rules that Enterprise Manager supports does not meet your requirements. You can create your own new rules based on your own policies and make it part of either an existing compliance standard, or you can create a new compliance standard. Enterprise Manager compliance library gives you a lot of flexibility, basically. You could use things as is, or you can build from scratch, or you can customize and associate targets to those standards and start continuously monitor your targets for any security posture. Here is a partial list of Oracle's own set of security standards. We provide standards for various types of the database targets. If you want to do a quick assessment of your database target today, let's say you're not using Enterprise Manager and you've never tried it out, but you want to know how secure your database targets are. If you want to do a quick assessment of your database targets, use what we call it as basic security configuration for Oracle database standard. It's a standard that has the most important set of rules that are required. So you use that standard, associate your database targets, and see how compliant you are and determine the gaps that you have. And you will find out if your database target is securely configured and whether you have the right security controls in place, or are there users with unwanted privileges, like that. If I have to take an example, for pluggable database, if you want to monitor privileges or restrict access to various tables, you can use basic security configuration for pluggable database. There are rules in that standard for monitoring these privileges, like access to audit table, user table, history table, etc. There are a large set of unique compliance rules for pluggable, single instance, and cluster database targets. Depending on your use case, you can use any of these standards as is or customize it, as I was mentioning earlier. With CIS benchmark, Department of Defense STIG, and Oracle's own security standards that are provided out of the box, you can maximize data security posture in your data center, whether it's on-prem or on cloud. As a DBA, you'll be able to monitor the overall compliance of all associated targets and remediate any violations. You can run automated continuous security checks based on these best practices that you choose. And you can audit security posture and validate its conformance with the policies. And you can also generate reports that typically third-party auditors will need. And you can give those reports to them. They can do the assessment and to see the compliance level to their policies that you have. So now let's look at each of these standards in a little more detail. CIS benchmark is a very new standard supported in Enterprise Manager. As I was mentioning earlier, 13.4 was the first release that had support for traditional audit profile for 12c databases. And Enterprise Manager as a product has a monthly cadence. So we have every month, there is a monthly release. I mean, there is a Enterprise Manager product release. So we have provided support for newer CIS versions in these monthly updates. And this, I'm not going to read through each of these bullet line items. It basically calls out various versions that we have supported over a period of time. And it also gives you informations like Enterprise Manager release update 6. RU6 means release update 6. It provided support for CIS version 3.0.0 benchmark for Oracle Database 12c. We supported both traditional and unified profiles for covering all target types, single instance, rack. Even though I've just said pluggable, it also has CDB in that support. And so there are about 100 plus rules covering various aspects of secure configuration. All rules are in CIS are agent side. This means that anytime a rule is run, it is done so on the target, and security posture is determined based on the latest configuration on the target. And these checks are automatically done every 24 hours in Enterprise Manager. As I was mentioning earlier, each rule, if at all it generates a violation, you will be notified on what the violation is and what the recommended remediation is. If you are familiar with, if you have deployed CIS benchmarks in your organization, you are probably familiar with these so-called CIS security controls. These CIS security controls are kind of a prioritized set of actions recommended to protect your organization and data from any cyber attacks. There are about 20 security controls in total. The top 6 controls are considered very basic. It implies these key controls should be implemented in every organization for essential cyber defense readiness. With database targets associated to CIS standard, The software aspects of these 6 CIS controls for databases will get addressed, like controlled use of administrative privileges, continuous vulnerability management, and analysis of audit logs. Let me take an example, right? I mean, say for example, you look at control 4, which is about controlled use of administrative privileges. The key recommendation for control 4 is minimize administrative privileges, use only when required, and monitor for any anomalous behavior. So in CIS benchmark, there are rules, or we call it subcontrols too, to monitor the change of default passwords, use of unique passwords. It maintains inventory of administrative accounts. It has, for example, uh, log and alert on any unsuccessful administrative account login. So there are many rules, unique rules like this that feeds into this fourth CIS security control. And CIS benchmark gives you all these rules out of the box. So you could use those for your security compliance. So just getting into the next level of detail in CIS space, you know, the way the CIS benchmark is defined is kind of categorized into these 5 buckets. I mean, Oracle database installation and patching requirements, parameter settings, database connection and login restrictions, user access and authorization restrictions, and audit policies and procedures. Each configuration group defines detailed requirements to ensure secure configuration of database targets. You know, the rule provided in CIS helps you to continuously monitor for any configuration vulnerability, to assess if users and administrators have least amount of privileges required, and to audit all administrative privileges. Now let's take an example. Let's look at a scenario and how Enterprise Manager will help you ensure compliance. Oracle provides recommendations for securing user accounts and privileges. Oracle recommends to grant necessary privileges only. It says do not provide database users or roles more privileges than are necessary. Oracle also recommends to restrict privileges like, say, create any job, export or import full database, become user. I mean, since these are all very powerful security related privileges, it recommends to restrict these privileges to only certain users. And it says basically grant these privileges to users who really need them. With all the compliance standards and rules that we went through in the last few minutes, Enterprise Manager compliance framework and standard will be able to check to ensure user access and authorization restrictions are in place. So let's look at an example, right? I mean, as an example, let's say you have this sys.aud table. It's an audit trail table that contains all audit records for the database. Unauthorized grantees should not have full access to this table. So permitting any authorizations for non-privileged users to manipulate the data will potentially lead to that user modifying the records and hide any unauthorized activities. So there is a rule in CIS to revoke all from unauthorized grantee for this audit trail table. You can use the SQL statement to restrict access to this table. Once you have revoked these privileges for unauthorized grantee, Enterprise Manager will be able to monitor and flag any deviation from this rule. There are rules available for each of the other tables in the database, for example, history table or user table. This is just a quick high-level example. On similar lines, STIG is another set of standards that are periodically published by Department of Defense. Enterprise Manager supports STIG standards, as I said, for both 11.2G and 12C database targets. So new versions of standards have been supported in various Enterprise Manager releases. And again, similar to CIS, STIG, in STIG, all rules are agent side. This means anytime you run the rule, you get the latest and greatest security posture of the database target because it's based on the current state of the target. Similar lines, STIG also provides comprehensive coverage for Oracle databases, and these coverages are similar to CIS benchmark that we went through. And with these sub-controls or rules, you can set up your database targets to be compliant with security policies and monitor for any compliance violations. So, these are all, each of both STIG and CIS are pretty comprehensive by itself. Depending on the industry that you are in, if you are in the federal side of the world, you would generally prefer STIG standards so that you are compliant with the Department of Defense, or if you're on the commercial side of the world, you generally prefer CIS or CIS-based standards. And as I said earlier, Oracle also publishes its own set of best practices for databases, and Enterprise Manager supports that for all types of targets. And it ensures adherence with advanced best practice security configuration settings that help you protect against any database related threats and attacks. So now let's look at a use case of database security assessment using CIS benchmark. And whatever I'm going to go through now, it will be similar. The workflow will be similar, whether you use STIG standards or your own or Oracle's best practices, or if you create your own rules and create your own standards, the workflow will be very similar. So use case here is a DBA is required to assess security compliance of 12C databases against a CIS benchmark, right? I mean, the very first step is, you need to choose the standard that you want the targets to be associated with. Then you review the rules for each of the category that is provided in the product out of the box. And if required, you can modify any rule definition using the SQL query provided in the product itself. Say, for example, let's say you want to modify the rule failed login attempts is less than or equal to 5. You want to modify that, let's say. So you click on that and it gives you the SQL query right in the product. I mean, you don't have to go look at some documentation to get this information. It is there in the product. You can pick up that SQL query, modify it to meet your requirements. And once the rules are reviewed and modified, you can associate the targets to the standard that immediately initiates a compliance check. And Enterprise Manager, the compliance check is initiated, and once it's a continuous process, runs every 24 hours or at your desired schedule. Enterprise Manager provides you an ability to validate conformance of multiple target types within one compliance framework, or you can create a framework consisting of various standards. You can drill down to look at target specific compliance score and analyze the results. If there are violations, you could remediate using the SQL query provided for each rule. In this case, say with the CIS benchmark that we are talking about, there are these rules available. This is the set of violations that you see in the screenshot that Enterprise Manager flagged, and you can look at each of the violation and use the SQL query provided to remediate. So that's a quick high-level, macro-level overview of what Enterprise Manager's compliance, secure compliance management can do for you. But I just want to quickly walk through a click through, if I can. So if you're familiar with Enterprise Manager product, you'll probably be familiar with this. But if not, that's fine. I mean, I just want to show you how it looks in the product. So, typically you log into the Enterprise Manager product, and then this is all the standard welcome screens. And let me just move this here. And if you want to look at the standards that we ship out of the box, we have something called library, and that's where all the standards are. So that can be found in this enterprise menu. Go to the library and you'll see all the standards that are delivered out of the box. There are these Oracle's basic security and for various types of Oracle entities, whether it's the Oracle Listener, Oracle Cluster Database, or Single Instance Database. And you also see the STIG standards that are shipped out of the box, and also the STIG standards, CIS standards that are shipped out of the box. And you'll also see the CIS for version 3.0.0, but not in this screenshot, but there is that support also out of the box for that. Now, let's say you want to use CIS to benchmark to check the compliance of your 12c database targets. And as I said, this is a agent side rule. And once you highlight, all you need to do is just highlight the standard that you want to use and use this associate targets page to choose the targets that you want to associate. Once you're done associating, the compliance check is automatically triggered. And once the compliance check assessment is done, there's a one-stop dashboard. That is where you see all the results for a given set of standards. You go to the dashboard page, and this is the go-to place for monitoring the overall compliance of your ecosystem, or not just the database targets. It could be any targets that Enterprise Manager supports. And if you have standards, compliance security standards associated to that, you'll be able to see all of those in this one dashboard. So in this case, you see in this demo case, you see there are 6 targets that have been evaluated, and there are about almost 1,600 to 1,700 violations of various types, whether it's critical, warning, minor warning, those type of things. Now, there are security incidents that exist in this demo environment, and you always, in this case, there are 2 critical security incidents, and you click on the 2, it gives you a context-specific list of those 2 security incidents. And you'll be able to further drill down, and you can see the compliance violations by target type. I mean, there is a bar chart here that kind of tells you, shows you the target type and the number of targets. I mean, the y-axis is the number of targets, if you look at it, and it says, I mean, there are this X number of targets that have violations, Y number of targets that are compliant. And at the bottom of the page, you will see what we call it as compliance summary, which will give you the list of row by row list of all the standards that are in play, and it tells you the compliance level of each of those targets or non-compliance level of those, and also gives you an ability to look at the violation details and the overall compliance curve. Now, if you want to, typically in a typical data center, if you are using one Enterprise Manager instance for managing thousands of databases or host targets, you might want to filter it, right? If you're looking for specific targets that you want to assess or look at it, you can filter it using the target type filter. You could choose database instance target type, page automatically renders. And you can also choose multiple targets. For example, you could choose host target here, and it also automatically renders. All the results that you see, everything is filtered to the targets that you have chosen. And if you want to further filter down by severity, you can choose, you can do so. And let's look at just the critical severities, right? So from almost 1,700 violations, if you want to look at just the critical severities for these 2 target types, there are about 48 target types. Now, whether it's the donut chart that you see there or the bar chart that you see there, you click on that, you'll be able to see more details of, you'll be able to drop down to the context-specific standards that these targets are associated with. And you click on, say, the number 18 here, for example, under the critical column, which is the list of targets. And it will show you there are 2 targets that are associated with this standard. Each target has about 9 violations. And if you want to look at what these violations are, you expand a target's list of violations, and it gives you the list of all the 9 violations. The most important point that you need to take away from this is, just in this one UI, one dashboard page, you can see what is the, when was the last time the rule was evaluated, what is the rule name that was evaluated, and rather that got violated, and what is the rationale for the violation. And also, most importantly, it also gives you the recommendations for remediating the violations. And that, for you as an administrator, I mean, we give you this kind of information, and we also give you recommendations. Now you can go look at the recommendations, and if you want to, if this is a violation that you want to automate, in the sense, in the future, if this violation happens again and you're okay to automate, if you have a well-defined set of remediation, you could just go automate that using the corrective actions workflow. And next time the violation happens, it will still report violation, but it will automatically remediate. So that way, you as a database administrator, you don't have to manually go and do the manual remediations. And you'll be able to see the, yeah.
Francisco here, 5 more minutes.
Okay, I'm almost done in probably a minute or so. Okay, so this is the view of the thing. And let's say you want to look at just the host-specific violations. You filtered it and to host only, and there are a few host targets here, and there are 29 violations. You click on that bar chart, and it takes you to the standard that these set of hosts are associated with. There are 29 critical violations. You click on that violations, it will show you all the 29 violations. Same model. We wanted to give you one dashboard, similar look and feel experience, and also give you all the relevant information that you need. And you can generate reports from this that will give you, that you can analyze offline too, if you want. I mean, you can generate an HTML report for this. So this is pretty much what I wanted to talk through. Again, as I said at the beginning of the session, this is a massive area, very important area. We cannot in any way cover completely in 45 minutes. This is just a peek, or high level, macro level peek into this, what Enterprise Manager can do to ensure secure configuration of your database targets or host targets, and ensure how you can monitor it from using the industry standard compliance, industry standard security benchmarks, and maintain compliance with your security policies. That's what I had in for this session. Happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Harish. I'm just checking. Oh, okay. I have a person, Babu. He was asking if you can accept his, thank you for the presentation, and if you can accept his invitation by LinkedIn that he just sent you. Also, Babu is asking, I do believe the compliance has been out there in previous versions of OEM as well, please. Is there anything specific, new features related with 13C, please?
Sure. See, compliance framework has been there in the previous Enterprise Manager 12C versions, but 12C is a very old management tool, and it has support for only STIG standards, and that too STIG standards only for I don't remember the last STIG standard version that we supported on 12C. It was done almost 8-10 years back. And all the new developments, whether supporting new STIG standards, supporting CIS benchmarks, brand new UI that I just now walked through with the click-throughs for compliance management, all those things are happening in 13C product family. And also all these standards that we support in 13C are the rules that are there for these standards are enhanced to map to the latest updates done in Oracle databases. 12C is almost 10 years old. The last time we updated was probably 8 to 10 years ago. So I would, if you are still on 12C, then you should definitely look at 13C.
Fantastic. All right, looks like this was the only question we have. Please remember that the replay of this session will be available in the next couple hours in the Hey Summit website of the conference. And you can also watch it again, tell your coworkers and friends to take a look and watch the session too. The registration is free and the replays will be available for 2 weeks. You can also ask questions to the speaker anytime during that 2 weeks by posting comments and questions directly in the replay page. Saying that, thank you so much, Harish, and hopefully everything is okay on your side and you can get some good sleep in San Francisco. And thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day and keep enjoying the conference.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure talking to everybody and look forward to interact with you offline. Have a wonderful day.